Take to the airwaves with us every day at Westchester's only remaining local community station, 1460 on your AM dial, or streaming live right now at WVOX.com. Better yet, download the WVOX app and take us with you wherever you go.
1460 WVOX.
Stay tuned now for Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome, everybody, to Westchester Eye on the Radio. I'm Peter Moses and my co-host, Ardina Seward, and this guy who was missing last week. What's your name again?
Mud.
And John Mud Charan is the other co-host.
I was able to check something off my bucket list when I wasn't here last week, Peter.
Did you get to spit at the president?
No, but I got to participate in an event in the Rose Garden. So it was a really exciting event, and got press credentialed and treated well, and got to see the Army football team be awarded its second straight Commander-in-Chief's trophy for having beaten both Air Force and Navy last year in football.
I bet you the ice team could beat them because they're tough guys.
Well, those
and criminals.
You know, you have them, and you have Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., so you have all of them there.
I've never seen any of those movies. Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. It's raining here in the outskirts of New Rochelle, where roads are closed for construction by Con Ed. Made a lot of us nearly late today.
It was like Dante's Circle of Hell, just trying to get through there.
I thought it was the Inferno. I didn't know he had a Circle of Hell.
Whatever. It was hard to get through there.
Anyway, we have a guest today. We have a guest today who's in the studio, and she has with her campaign manager, or press person,
communications manager.
Her communications manager. And his name is Lou Young. Her name is I may mangle your last name, but I'm assuming your name is Melissa Loehr.
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
I got it right.
Yes.
That's Judge Melissa Loehr to you.
That was Lou Young, everybody. Lou, Ardina, and I have been friends for well over about 35 years. Ardina maybe longer. Although I don't. We're going to stick to Melissa right now. Now, you are a judge in Peekskill right now.
Yes, that's right.
And you work for Legal Aid.
Yes, I've been a public defender at Legal Aid since 2001, and I'm also a sitting judge in Peekskill City Court.
Where are you, Legal Aid?
In the Bronx, the Criminal Defense Division.
Got it. You got to move closer to the mic.
In the Criminal Defense Division in the Bronx.
Okay. And now you're running for Westchester County Court Judge.
Right.
Why are you doing that?
Because I have almost 20 years of experience in criminal law, and I'd like to take all that experience with me onto the bench in the county court. I'm a lifelong Democrat, and I'm seeking to win election in the Democratic primary on June 25th.
And how many people are running against you?
There's 4 of us going for two open seats.
By the way, how many county court judges are there? Do you know the makeup of the bench? I mean, is it like 20 or 30 judges or more than that?
Like 9 or so, something like that. 9, maybe 14. I looked.
So it's not a huge number, because I was talking to my best friend a few minutes ago, and he asked me, how many county court judges are there? And I said, I'm dumbfounded. And he goes, well, you did a lot of research for the show today, didn't you?
There's a staff of county judges. There's more than a few. And
why isn't the Peekskill judgeship enough? Why do you want to go on to I guess this is a bigger job and full time?
Well, the Peekskill judgeship is enough. I love the job. I love being a public defender as well. But being a county court judge would be taking my experience further into a bigger job to do more, that I could do more in for the community.
And what makes you special for this job? What is your elevator speech?
Well, it's a Democratic primary, so I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm a mother of 4. I take my 2 decades worth of criminal experience with me onto the bench, and I come at the job with the perspective of a public defender. So
what does that mean?
That means I've worked as a public defender at the Legal Aid Society for my entire career. I've been fighting for everybody's rights. I've been meeting with people. I've been encountering people's different needs as they enter into the criminal justice system. So I've learned to assess people and their individual circumstances when they come into the criminal justice system. So I think I can take that experience with me further from the Peekskill Criminal Court into the county court.
Why is there, if I may, do you want to ask something, Peter?
No, go ahead.
But why is there a need for someone with your skills now?
There's a need for it. I think a lot of times you get people that were former prosecutors becoming judges. So I bring a different perspective. I bring a perspective as a public defender, as an advocate.
Which would mean that you might have some... I don't know if you're going to have antipathy towards the district attorney's office, but you certainly wouldn't be of the mindset to bend over backwards for that branch of the legal community.
No, I believe I'll be fair and impartial to everybody, but I definitely wouldn't be partial to one side or the other. I wouldn't be partial to the prosecutor's office. It's not that I've been... Sometimes you get a prosecutor that becomes a judge that could be partial because they've worked at that office for decades.
And that happens sometimes. Lou, how many trials did we cover where we thought judges were so bending over for the prosecution they should have gone on a date?
And yes, and I'll tell you this: one of the other people who are running, one is also a judge, like Melissa. Melissa is a judge in this jurisdiction. She does not practice criminal law.
We're going to have to come back.
Okay, all right.
We're here talking to Judge Melissa Loehr, who's a Peekskill city judge and is now running for the county judgeship, and the primary is June 26th. 25th. Good thing I listened well. This is Westchester Eye on the radio, and she has a lot to say. So when we get back from our first break, let's learn more about Melissa Loehr.
Come fly with us every day on America's legendary community station, WVOX, for you and yours at 1460 on your AM dial or streaming live right now at WVOX.com. Better yet, download the WVOX app and take us with you wherever you go.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Westchester Eye on the Radio, our weekly discussion of issues relating to Westchester and the surrounding area. And since that's our motto, we are talking today with a political candidate, actually a judge who's running for an elected office, and that we'll get into that in a second, the difference between a judge and a politician. But Lou Young, the communications manager for Melissa Loehr, a judge from Peekskill, was interrupted in the middle of an explanation he was giving us. So we're going to give you a chance to finish what you were thinking.
What I was saying is that Judge Loehr is a judge in this jurisdiction, Westchester County. She practices law as a defense lawyer in the public defender in the Bronx. So she does not practice law in this jurisdiction. There's, I believe, one candidate on the ballot who has his whole career has been a prosecutor in this jurisdiction, and that is something that voters might want to consider when they vote. They're all lawyers. They all can probably do it, but everybody brings something else to the job, and Judge Loehr brings what she brings. I'm done. I'm out.
And that brings us to our next question with Judge Melissa Loehr, who's from Peekskill, and Judge Loehr. Lou made an interesting point. He said that the voters will make a decision based upon what the candidate stands for, but you can't have a political position because the bottom line is you don't practice politics. You don't bring policy, and you don't introduce that to be passed on things. You bring a past record of how you think, how you feel to the judicial system. What attitude are you bringing, or would you bring to the Westchester County judicial system if you were elected?
Well, so I'm running in the Democratic primary.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a Democrat for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working for the Democratic Party since I was a toddler, all the way through to my adult life, working for candidates. And I've traveled around the world, and I'm back, and I'm still a Democrat. I've never lost my Democratic base and values. So I bring that with me to Peekskill City Court, and I'll bring that with me also onto the Westchester County Court bench.
Now, the fact that you've worked for the Legal Aid Society, you've worked defending people, do you think that gives you a different perspective, or perhaps a more compassionate perspective than some of the other candidates?
Yes, it does give me a different perspective than a prosecutor would have, because I'm meeting people when they first enter in the criminal justice system as defendants. So I've had so much experience doing this that I can gauge people when I meet them, and I find that when people enter into the criminal justice system, there's usually a problem that needs to be addressed. So I have the empathy, I think, that's needed to sort of consider everybody's individual circumstances and use that empathy to see if there's a problem that we can solve for that person and thereby for the whole community.
Now, Lou mentioned that one of the other three candidates for the two slots is from the prosecutorial side. How do you distinguish yourself from the other candidates? What sets you apart?
Well, again, that I'm a lifelong Democrat.
Understood.
I've always been a Democrat. There's another candidate that recently became a Democrat. So there's that. There's my experience fully in criminal law. I know criminal law A to Z. So I bring that. I bring I'm well-traveled. I bring a sort of creative background with me as well, and a world perspective, and really a problem-solving sort of perspective with me.
Hey, give me some examples of some of the problem solving that you've just mentioned.
Well, the problem solving is that when a lot of people enter into the criminal justice system with specific problems that they may need help with. So there are mental health problems, there are drug treatment problems that people may have, a whole number of collateral consequences that could befall someone in the criminal justice system as well. There are immigration issues, employment issues, there are education. There are so many different areas that can be addressed.
What areas of the criminal justice system in Westchester would you like to change?
Well, you probably shouldn't talk about it.
Okay.
Because that's not her role to change.
But it is to preside, and it is to try to, if there's something that is perceived wrong or needs to be balanced, then the judge is in a position to try to make things more fair, more equitable, and that's what I'm trying to reach at.
But you're managing a system. We were talking on the way over here, Judge, about the new discovery laws, and you were explaining to me how the new discovery procedures and rules that were just passed by the state legislature would impact the practical application of justice in plea bargains. So maybe you could go into that a little
Sure,
bit.
why not?
Okay, for instance, yes, in plea bargaining, it makes the playing field more level because the prosecutor would turn over the evidence earlier on. The defense attorney would be able to see what the case is before them, and the defendant would be able to see what the allegations are, what the possible defense may be, what the case is against the defendant at all, if any. People often have a claim of innocence that also needs to be considered. But when people are facing very heavy jail times and they're offered something that's way less of a sentence, sometimes they take it or have taken it blindly in the past without knowing the full case that's against them. So these reforms will really help to bring more fairness to the whole process.
Now, when we're talking about reforms, your detractors have said that you're too progressive. So how do you defend that label?
Well, I am a progressive Democrat, and if being progressive is negative as far as wanting to help the community and to help people and to try to ensure that when people re-enter into the society, they've made some sort of progress, then I am progressive, and I don't think it's a negative thing.
What about the issue of the marijuana laws? It hasn't happened yet, but down the road, perhaps if you get the position that you want, you may have to legislate on that. How will legalizing marijuana in New York State impact the area that you would serve?
Well, I'm not allowed to speak on legislative matters, but if marijuana is fully legalized, it would lead to people not being criminalized for having small amounts of marijuana out in public or larger amounts. So that would be the change. As far as arrests go, there would be less arrests in regard to that.
And a little bit here about your discussions about how do you feel about sentencing out here when it comes to, do you have feel that there's an overcrowding, there's a need for more leniency? Do you feel that tough cases require tough justice?
Is that music?
Yeah.
Is that music?
It is.
We're coming up on. You got 30 seconds, Lou.
Well, as a judge, I have to follow the sentencing laws. So I would follow the sentencing laws on a case-by-case basis, and that would be my job.
And that fits in well with our upcoming break. You're listening to Westchester Eye on the radio here on WVOX 1460 AM and heard worldwide at WVOX.com. We'll be back right after this.
With world and national news, here is the latest update.
To Westchester Eye on the radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back, everybody. Here we are again at 3:35 on a rainy Monday. Having trouble with my headset here, but it'll come back in. We are Westchester Eye on the radio. I am Ardina Stewart, along with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and our guest today in studio are Judge Melissa Loehr, along with my former colleague, the fabulous Mr. Louis Young. And Judge Loehr is in a contest, soon to be, for Westchester County Judge. Now, we were talking earlier about your progressive label. Your father was a Yonkers mayor, and your father is also a judge. How has that how has that formed your career?
So, my father was also a two-term councilman in Yonkers before he was mayor. Ever since I can remember, I've been campaigning for the Democratic Party. I think I was about four years old when he became councilman for the first time. So it's really been a way of life, being involved politically, and the message that my mother is a teacher, the message that my parents gave me was to find your role in society and give back to your community and serve your community. So that's really formed me as a person and my decision to become a lawyer and now to be a judge.
Were you ever at political odds with your father? I mean, in a friendly debate, in a friendly way?
Absolutely. We don't agree on everything. We're both critical thinkers. We both have our own views on things, but we respect each other's opinions. We listen to each other. And absolutely, we don't agree on every single thing at the end of the day.
As an attorney who's been before dozens of judges during your 20 years at Legal Aid, what have you? What are the best practices that you learned from these judges, and what are the worst?
So, yes, I've seen a lot of good judges and a lot of not so good judges over the years. The good judges I've seen are considerate, they're impartial, they're efficient, they don't waste people's time. There are people that are in court that need to get back to work. They need to pick up their kids from school. They have other things to do that day. Nobody particularly wants to be there. So it's important to be efficient and considerate of people's time, fair to both sides, listen to everybody, and then make a considerate decision based on everything.
What about judicial temperament?
Temperament's very important. You have to be patient. You can't lose your temper. You can't raise your voice at people. And it's very important. I've seen judges lose their temper on the bench. I've seen judges storm off the bench.
I saw a judge cry on the bench.
Yeah, that can happen too. I've seen
the Bronx.
Right. I've seen judges yell at attorneys, be disrespectful. So, yeah, I think I've learned a lot how to be good and how to be a not so good judge. And so far, I feel like I've maintained my composure and done a good job up in Peekskill.
Now, as an attorney who's done a lot of criminal work, you go up against some very testosterone-filled attorneys on the opposite side. I mean, we know a lot of defense attorneys who are a lot of bluster. As a judge, how do you think you'll be able to keep them in line? Because there's so many of them are runaway railroad cars, and they just barrel forward no matter what anybody says. How do you control that in the courtroom? You're going to come up against that.
Well, I've been a judge I'm in my third year already. I haven't had a problem with that so far. I think I'm very good at maintaining proper decorum in my courtroom. I'm a mother of 4, so I know how to mold people's behavior. I know how to make sure people are behaving and being respectful of each other. That's really key.
But I've seen
Time out, sit in the corner.
I've seen defense attorneys bully judges. There was a guy named Bruce Cutler who represented
John Gotti.
Yeah. Well, good luck with this judge. Is all I'm gonna say.
Not me. No one will be bullying me. I assure you that.
And how is your relationship with law enforcement? Because judges have to deal with cops all the time in many trials.
It's good. My relationship is good with law enforcement. Law enforcement personnel are witnesses just like any other citizen when they come into the courtroom, and everybody deserves the same amount of respect.
Now, we're led to, we understand that you spent some time in South Africa in the early 90s. Can you describe for us why you were there and what you learned during your time in South Africa?
I went there in my senior year of college. I had a professor that was from South Africa, and he was a great professor. I'd taken a lot of courses with him, and he had an invitation out to the students if anybody would like to come to South Africa. He was going back. He lived there. We had studied apartheid in class and talked about it in our coursework. I was studying black literature at the time. And he said, hey, if anybody wants to go there, I'm going back. You can come to South Africa. You can see what's the political climate there. You can stand up for what you think is right. And it's an open invitation. I took him up on it, and I went there. And it opened my eyes to a lot of things. It opened my eyes to the evils of racism, gave me more exposure. I was coming from New York as a person from white privilege, and it was and all of a sudden I was living in apartheid South Africa. So it opened my eyes to the injustice of the world, and I learned a lot from that experience. And then coming back here, the perspective of having gone through that opened my eyes more to the problems that are here as well.
John?
When you see the problems that are here, how do you bring that to the judge's chair? I mean, when you see them here, you know, we've talked about you try to offer everybody respect. Does that mean that even though you're offering respect, you have a favorite or a preferred way of looking at things?
Well,
I'm not sure what you're getting at.
Well, when I say a preferred way of looking at things, the justice system often has moralistic issues to it. What are your criteria that you're going to use to try to bring to the judge's chair if you get it here in Westchester?
Well, like I've said before, I mean, I think my criteria, my style is that everybody that comes into the courtroom deserves the same amount of respect. All the litigants, the defendants are under the presumption of innocence, which is something that people often forget. Everybody deserves the same amount of respect when they come into the courtroom, same amount of consideration, and people should be highly considered. Everybody should be highly considered, and hopefully we'll leave when the time comes with some sort of progress made.
Do you follow the concept of evidence over emotion?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying in many ways in our current society, that's not the case. That's why I bring it out, that I think that too often we're losing sight of the fact that whenever it comes to trial, we do need to emphasize evidence.
Yeah. I mean, she's a judge.
That's what the evidence is.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be the case in so many instances that we see out here. I mean, you look at things.
John, with judges or with politicians?
Well, when we're trying to judge whether or not somebody should be a judge, I mean, and things like that. I mean, you look at what happened with Judge Kavanaugh, and you look at what happens with other politicians. They were judged based on emotional feelings.
But they weren't running for office. It's an appointed position in the Supreme Court. It's not the same thing as voters deciding who they want to be.
It filters down through all of our legal system out here.
I I don't know that that's the case, but I don't think that's true. But I'm no expert at that.
He's talking about, does he have any inherent bias? That's what it comes down to.
That's a different question.
No,
That's
because
a different question.
it's where is she coming from when she's adjudicating.
I mean, that's what
That's not what he was asking.
That is what he's
That's
asking.
what the trial is for. It's for the evidence to come forth, and the prosecution has to meet their burden. Absolutely.
Oh, Ardina.
Well, we are winding down to our last 10 seconds, so I better talk fast. Stick with us. We have in studio Judge Melissa Loehr, and more good stuff to come.
1460 WVOX.
Let's return now to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses, John Sharan, and Ardina Seward on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back. This is our final quarter hour of Westchester Eye on the Radio. Ardina, before we go any further, who do we have on next week?
We have an activist group called Operation Green Light, which is advocating to give licenses to undocumented people.
Ah, okay.
And we also may have a lawyer on who will tell us the pros and cons of it and why it could work and maybe why it shouldn't work.
Okay, well, today we have a judge who's also an attorney named Melissa Loehr. She's running for Westchester County Court Judge. The primary is the 25th of June. So write that down because I initially said the 26th.
And you can't vote on the 26th.
And you can't vote on the 26th. Well,
And it's a new date this year, so we want people to get out and vote. They changed the date this year. Usually it's in September.
I know that, yeah. They changed. There are other votes that are being taken that day on the 25th. We've had other candidates on for that. Well, during our break, your communications guru, Lou Young, made a suggestion that we about some questions we might ask you, and I want to pick up his mantle a little bit, not his Mickey mantle.
Objection sustained.
Thank you so much, Lou. He really blends into the background well, doesn't he? You seem somewhat uncomfortable with your answers. And I'm curious as to why you're uncomfortable.
I'm not uncomfortable with my answers, but
it's the questions then.
Yeah.
Only the questions that I didn't understand. I'm only. It's not that I'm uncomfortable. It's just that as a judicial candidate, I'm not allowed to answer all the questions that I'm asked. I'm not allowed to talk about cases that I've ruled on or how I'd rule on a case, or positions that I would take on certain things. So I am cautious when I answer questions. I'm not uncomfortable as much, but I am a private person. So to the extent that I'm running as a judicial candidate, this is sort of outside of my comfort zone. I'm not running for Congress or for president. This is a term where judges get to sit for a period of 10 years and sort of in a place where they can be reserved and make decisions away from the public eye. So to be in the public eye and to sort of expose myself in this way is a bit uncomfortable. I agree, but I'm not a politician at heart. So
is there a track? Because I mean, in the way New York State works, as far as I understand about the judiciary, there's a Court of Appeals. There are different levels to the Court of Appeals. There's First Circuit, Second Circuit, and all that sort of thing. And there's county judges, and then there's state Supreme Court judges. Now, do you have any aspiration to be a state Supreme Court judge? And why would you choose Westchester County Court versus running as a state Supreme Court justice?
No, I've been asked that before, if I'd like to run for Supreme Court, and the answer is no. The reason I chose county court is because my interest is in criminal law and criminal cases. The Supreme Court cases deal with civil cases, matrimonial cases. These are areas of the law that I'm not interested in presiding over.
But wait a minute, Lou, you weren't you guys had a different reporter there, John Slattery for Carolyn Wormus, but that was in state Supreme Court. That was a murder trial back in the early 90s.
What all I can tell you is that the criminal court, the county court judges try the criminal cases. That may have been the case back then.
So John Carey was not a state Supreme Court judge? I remember writing it that way. At least that's how I remember it.
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I'll tell you what we're running for. You know what she's running for.
Okay.
This is a criminal court part that she's running for. The state Supreme Court justices generally handle other matters.
I'd like to expand that a little bit. I don't know how much criminal law has to do with how much it impacts the undocumented, but the demographics in Westchester have changed a lot in the last 10 years. You have a large immigrant population, many of whom are undocumented. There are issues with deportation. There are issues with ICE. How would that factor into your judgeship?
Well, when people enter into the criminal justice system and they have immigration issues, the consequences can be much greater for them because they can be held by, if there's some sort of outstanding ICE detainer, they could be held on immigration matters. They could be deported. They could be held pending the outcome of the criminal case. So that makes their entry into the system much different than for someone that's a citizen here.
But there seems to be some wrangling between the feds and the federal law and the state law about the issue of deportation. Now, does that factor into the future of Westchester law?
Well, it doesn't. It doesn't change the law, but it factors into the whole dynamic of being a criminal defendant in court and having a federal detainer, an immigration detainer at the same time.
Because there's the whole question of sanctuary cities and the repercussions against sanctuary cities, and I'm just wondering if that's going to, if you're going to have to resurrect old laws to protect cities.
Well, I can't really speak on legislation, but I do know that there was a practice where immigration officials were coming into courthouses to arrest people that were on the way to court, which really does serve as a deterrent to people coming to court, whether it's people that are defendants or crime victims or family members coming to attend trials. So that serves as a deterrent for people actually to even come to court at all. So the chief judge sent an order down saying that unless you have a federal warrant, the immigration officials are not allowed to come to the courthouse anymore to arrest people.
Well, we're going to have to wait and see on that. Now, as a woman, have you felt any kind of bias in your campaign to become Westchester County judge?
I don't feel any bias. I'm the only woman running for one of the 4 spots. So no, I don't feel any bias against me in regard to being a woman. No.
Two spots. So only one.
Well, I'm one person going for one of 2 spots out of 4 people.
So do you think that makes you stronger as a candidate? Having to overcome the barriers of a woman in basically a male dominant system?
Well,
female judges aren't rare. I mean, let's this is not.
Yeah, but it's still an old boy network. Let's face it. I mean, and she's in a gender minority.
Well, she is in this race.
Well, I am the only woman, the only woman candidate here.
Were you appointed to be the judge in Peekskill? Did you run for office there as well?
I was appointed by the Democrats.
Okay. Well, if somebody wanted to support your candidacy, is there a organization they can send money to for advertising or things like that, or no?
But elect Judge Loehr. .com.
And so is elect Judge
Loehr.
Right.
ElectJudgeLoehr.com. Yes.
Okay, so we wanted to get that out there as well. And do you have a website, your own website?
ElectJudgeLoehr.
That's the website as well.
And people can volunteer. I mean, they can hand out flyers.
Yeah,
do you need people?
We have a volunteer button on there too. If anybody wants to volunteer, we would love to have any support or any volunteers that would like to join the campaign.
I have a separate question for Lou that has nothing to do with you.
Oh, please. No, come on.
What is your summer schedule, Lou, with Sway? When is your group Sway?
Oh, yeah, now we're talking.
Where are you guys
Friday night, Spectators, New Rochelle, this Friday. All right, that's all I can tell you right now.
And we're out of time.
We are out of time. So, Ardina, once again, our next week guest is?
Operation Green Light. They are going to come and they're going to tell us why we should allow undocumented persons to have a driver's license and how that's going to benefit society and how it's going to benefit them.
All right, everybody, you have a great week. Enjoy the weather. I think after tomorrow we're supposed to get better weather. Have a great week. Bye, everybody.
Objection!